Hello, everyone, and welcome to another webinar from Exadel about Tiggzi. What we're going to talk about today is offline apps for Tiggzi users. So my name is Charley Cowens. I'll be helping out Max Katz, who will be the main presenter, and let's just get on with it. Here's our plan. We'll tell you a little about the main presenter. We'll tell you a little about Exadel, we'll tell you some about Tiggzi, and then we'll tell you about building offline apps with Tiggzi. And then we'll show you a little what we mean by working inside Tiggzi itself. And then at the end, we'll answer any questions you might have. One thing to keep in mind is that in the lower right corner of the panel for GoToMeeting, there's a place where you can enter questions. So you can either put questions in as we go along, or you can wait till the end and start typing in questions. We'll try and answer as many as possible, and if there's anything left over, you can always contact Max directly to find out, or you can send an email to our support email, which will be shown in the last slide when we do the Q&A. One thing to keep in mind is that we record these, and then we post them. They're available through the normal GoToMeeting channels, and we also usually almost always post them on YouTube too. So all that information should be in a follow-up email that goes out. So let's get on with things. Well, I'm not going to say much about Max because basically he lives and breathes Tiggzi. That's his deal. He's been with the project from the very beginning, and that's what he looks like. There's his email address. He likes getting emails from people about Tiggzi, so don't be shy about contacting him directly if you ever want to. He's been involved in other things, but they don't matter anymore because the only thing that matters is Tiggzi for Max. Now, just quickly about Exadel. We're a global software engineering company. We make Tiggzi, but Tiggzi kind of runs as its own brand. And one of the thing that we're talking about today is a cloud-based platform that's kind of a spin-off of some of our mobile app development work that we do for customers. There's a map that shows our global presence. We're headquartered in the United States, but most of our development offices are in Eastern Europe. And here are some of the clients that we've worked with, only a selection. And there, no more about Exadel. Now let's move on to what you're really at this webinar for, which is to learn about Tiggzi and specifically about offline apps where people are interested in mobile apps in general. So I'm going to turn everything over to Max now. Here you go, Max.
Thank you, Charlie, and welcome, everyone. So let me give you a quick overview of our platform.
Someone called you handsome, man.
And I'm going to build a quick example, again, if there are any new people, again, to show you how Tiggzi works, and then we're going to dive into some of the offline topics. So first, Tiggzi is a platform for creating mobile apps, and there's a number of main components. The first one you can see is the app builder. It's basically IDE running in a browser. Moving down, the technologies that we use are standard HTML5 and JavaScript CSS technologies out there. We use jQuery mobile for components. You can also build Windows 8 apps. And then for hybrid apps, we use PhoneGap. And so that means that you can publish the app to either Android or iOS markets. You can also do Windows Phone. And of course, you can also invoke any APIs available via PhoneGap, and then of course allows you to invoke some of the native features such as camera, for example. Moving to the middle column, we also got backend services, and then basically a cloud database for your app data. So if you're building an app and you need to store data, we give you an app cloud database. We also have a push capability, so you can set push notifications to users that install the app. And the service test code is still, we're working on that specific feature. Moving down, REST APIs. It's extremely easy to consume any REST APIs out there. And there's a whole explosion of APIs happening. Everyone from Twitter to U.S. government exposing APIs, and everyone in between. And so consuming APIs is very simple, and it's one of the core features in Tiggzi. And that's what I'm going to show you using ESPN API. So of course, at the end, what you get is you get your app. And you can see, again, it can be HTML5. That means it's running in the browser. It can be iOS, Android. That means using PhoneGap or Apache Cordova. It's for Windows. Again, we can do Windows Phone. And you can also do Windows 8, which are, of course, different platforms. So having said that, let me go to Tiggzi, and I'm actually going to build an app for you quickly. And then we're going to come back to this and then dive into more offline stuff. All right, so let me create a new app. And I'm going to, as I mentioned, going to be using ESPN API. And I'm going to click Create. It's going to load the builder. Again, so this is sort of the first feature that I mentioned. All right, just a few seconds. And we get the builder will load. And also just to say, I'm going to be using ESPN API, and so ESPN API is managed by a company called Mastery. So just kind of for your information. So we're almost there.
It doesn't like you.
I know.
It's usually not this slow. Only when you're doing a demo does this happen.
Well, you know what I'm going to do? Let me, actually, here we go, I think. No, I mean, you know what? Let me just refresh. Let me do this.
Yeah.
Well, here we go. This worked better. Anyhow, so this is the start page, and on the left-hand side, we've got the project, basically the project pages and services and so on. So let me open the first page, which is start screen. Again, this is sort of the default page. And let me change this to ESPN. News. So the actual API I'm going to use is going to be ESPN Headlines API. All right, and so what we're going to do is going to get a grid component. Scrolling down here, we're going to get a grid component, right? And by default, it has 4 cells, but actually I just need 1 row. So I'm going to head to Properties, and I'm going to change it to 1 in 1. In the row that I have, I'm going to place a label component, and this is going to be the headline title, and I'm just going to make it bold, so we can see the title. Next, I'm going to another label, and this is going to be the description, and I'm also going to place a link component, and this is going to allow us to go to ESPN site and actually view the entire article. And I'm just going to change the link to read more. All right. Now, what's also very nice that I can test this app again. There is not a whole lot here, but I can click the test button. And again, I'm always starting with a mobile web app, and that allows me to test it in the browser. So I'm using this frame, but of course you can also launch without the frame, but I can make this public. And actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this link into the chat window for you guys, so you can try this as well as I build it. All right, so give this a try. All right, so this is the way you should get. Again, pretty simple, but again, you're able to test it. If you want, I'm going to keep it for just a second. If you would like, you can also try this on your mobile device. You can scan this QR code. But actually, let me do this. If you guys want to try this on your mobile phone, here, I'm going to put a different URL that's without the frame into the chat window. So this is no frame. Okay, so you can click on the second link if you want to try it on the phone. Having said that, let me go ahead and define a service. So I'm going to go to Create New and define a service. So the name is fine. I'm going to use the REST service. Click Create. All right, and it opens the service editor. And of course, one of the most important parts is entering the service URL. And again, I don't want to type it, so I have a little cheat sheet here. I'm going to copy this URL and then go back here. All right, so this is the URL for news. And next, I'm going to enter the API key. So one of the required request parameters is an API key, right? It has other parameters, but we're not going to worry about it. And then I also got a cheat sheet for the API key here. Get this. All right. Anyhow, next, what I can do, what I would need to do is to define the response, but I can actually do it via test. I can actually automatically generate the response via test. So if I click test here, right, I get a JSON back response from the service, and this, of course, shows me that the service works. You know, if you get an error message that indicates maybe something is incorrect, the API key is incorrect, the URL might be incorrect, and so on. So again, it's helpful to make sure the service works before using it on the page. But I can automatically create a response, and all right, so clicking this button, you can see service response created successfully. And if I switch to response, this is what I get. Now again, you can't define this by hand, but of course this is much faster and easier. All right, so we're done with the service. Let's go back to our page, and I'm in design mode. I'm going to switch to data, and I'm going to add the service to the page. So service, and this is REST service. So this indicates the service was added to the page. Next, I have to bind the service. So edit mapping, right? This is the API key. This is the request for the service. This is the API key. You can see it's already set, right? So there's no other parameters I need to map. But in general, again, you would take data from the page and map it to services input, again, for other services, for example. Let's go to response, and this is, again, the everything I get back from ESPN, and this is my page. So headline, this is the title, so I'm going to map it to the first label. And the description, this is the second. And finally, we got a link. So you can see ESPN returns a couple of links. I want to use the mobile one. And so I'm going to map it to the URL. All right. One more thing I need to do is headlines. This is the collection of all headlines. So because I want to display all of them instead of just one, I want to map headlines to the grid itself. And then this is going to give me an automatic looping feature to go over all the headlines instead of just one. All right. We're almost done. Let's go back to design. The last thing we would like to do is we need to invoke the service. And for example, we would like to invoke it in this case on page load. And so I'm going to open events. So you can select the component from the list here, or you can click Start Screen in breadcrumbs and start the page is selected, the event is set by default to load, but of course you can change it. And we would like to invoke service. And then we only have one service on the page, so we're going to go ahead and click add, right? And at this point, we can now click test. All right, and we get the headline news. And so if you guys refresh, either in your browsers or your phones, you should be able to get this. And again, if you click read more, it's going to take you to an ESPN mobile site for that particular article. All right. So anyhow, so what I showed you again, I just wanted to give you again an idea sort of the general concept of how what you can do in Tiggzi. Now, so what you do next is you basically what we just built is a mobile web app which runs on any browser, right, any device, any platform. You can then from here you can export the app, right, and you can, for example, you can also host it without an example. You can also host it on your custom domain. So you can export the app, right? You can, for example, the first column will get you the HTML, JavaScript, CSS, okay, and that's for a mobile web app. If you want to go with the hybrid or native approach, you can build a binary file. And we have our own build running in the cloud for Android and iOS. And you'll get a binary file, and you can just basically push it to the app store. I mean, Android is simple. You know, it's going to take about 5 minutes, and this app will be available. iOS is obviously a little bit longer. And just to kind of show you, I can actually launch this build. I'm going to come back to it because it's going to be probably 10 or so seconds, maybe probably more, before the build finishes. Well, once the build finishes, it's going to show you QR code. And those of you with an Android phone can actually download the app, right, and actually run it and install it in your device. So it's that fast and that simple. So I'm going to come back to it once the build is done. All right. What else? I guess the last thing is, well, two last things I want to mention is that, again, you can use any PhoneGap API. So PhoneGap is included automatically in this project. So any PhoneGap API you can use. And we also have a couple of services which basically are built on top of PhoneGap API. You can see barcodes, camera contacts, and geolocation. All right? Actually, the build finished, I think. So if you guys, here, I'll keep it for a few seconds. If you want to scan this QR code, those of you with Android phones, give it a try. And again, it's going to download the file. So I don't know if someone actually wants to scan it, and just let us know via chat window that you're able to get. We'll continue. But again, you do need to have a QR app on your phone to scan it.
You can't just do it by eye?
Not yet.
Okay.
All right, so someone scanned it. All right, let's keep it for another 10 seconds for other people to give them a chance, and then we're going to continue. All right. Very good. So let's go back here. Actually, right here. The last thing I want to show you is this notion of plugins. Is that a plugin is basically prepackaged pages, services, and the mapping all ready to go. And that makes it even simpler to build apps. So what I showed you is actually pretty simple. But using plugins basically takes you to the next level. And we have a catalog where we add plugins all the time. So as an example, we do have the ESPN. Well, you can only search ESPN. So we have a ESPN API plugin and sample app that you can just basically import. You do need to specify your API key, which you get from ESPN.com, your developer site. And then basically it's ready to run app. It shows how to use services. So again, it makes it very easy to start building real apps. And again, same thing with Best Buy, for example. You want to use Best Buy API, and so you can import the plugin, and it gives you a good starting point. All right, let's go back. Go back here. All right, so what are we going to go over now is that, so making your app offline, we basically need two things. First, we need to make the app data available in the browser or offline, right? And then, for example, records, users, and so on. So that's one thing. The other thing we need to make is the actual app files, and that's JavaScript, CSS, images, and so on. So again, to truly make an offline app, you need those two things. So just one of them is usually not enough. All right? So let's start with the first one, is making app data available in the browser, because I'm pretty sure most of you have probably worked with at least one of the items here. So the first one is web storage, or also known as just HTML file local storage, or just local storage, all right? Next one is web SQL, which is usually, again, people know it as SQLite, and there's IndexedDB. And I also mentioned PhoneGap apps, I'm sorry, because, again, it has its own sort of API, but it is based on web SQL API. So let's start with web storage. Again, this is the most sort of common or popular out there, the most simple to use. It's a simple key value storage that's available in the browser. So here's an example. You can say name, or you can say name equals Charlie, and it has a very simple API. I am just showing two methods. It has a few other ones. So if you want to store something, if you want to get this item in the browser, so you just say local storage, get item, and you specify the key. All right, so extremely simple. If you want to save something into local storage, you say basically give it a name and then specify the value. So basically key and then value. All right. Again, very simple and very easy to use. One thing do want to keep in mind, and so again, it sort of varies by the browser, but the storage that the browser gives you is anywhere from 2.5 megabytes to 10 megabytes of storage. And again, it's going to vary by the browser. Also, it's going to vary by a desktop browser versus a mobile browser. So it's something to keep in mind. Another thing to mention is that so this sort of storage will survive if you close the browser. All right. So again, you can save a value, and then you close the browser, turn off your computer. You can turn back your computer on, open the browser, and that the value that you saved will be there. All right. So again, it will be gone if you clear the local storage, or you maybe clear the value programmatically using API, using local storage API. But again, what's important to keep in mind is that this local storage is just standard browser API. All right. Again, as for browser support, again, as a pretty universal support, I mean, pretty much all the browsers support, and I'm just showing, this is just a partial list, all right? And it's a site called caniuse.com where you can check various features that are supported by the browser. And again, I'm just showing just the latest browsers, but I mean, you could actually see previous versions as well. So you can see pretty much every browser supports this feature. All right. Again, it's very easy to use, very simple, but at the same time, being very easy and simple also has a number of, again, sort of drawbacks. Again, it's only key value pairs. So to kind of create any complex data structures, I mean, you would need to build something on top of it. And of course, there's also storage limitations and also things such as running queries. Again, you would need to build something on top of the available API, for example, to search for data and so on. All right. Now, how would you use web storage in Tiggzi? So first of all, anywhere you can write JavaScript, you can use the web storage API directly. So you can write in the local storage get item and set item. So again, anywhere you can load JavaScript or write JavaScript, you can definitely use that. There's also a special create local storage variable event that I'm going to show you. And you can also do it in service-to-page mapping. Right? So, but let me go back and just quickly show you where you would use it. So first of all, where can you define JavaScript? Well, there are many places where you can write custom JavaScript. Again, you are running a browser app, so basically any JavaScript goes. Right? So you're not limited to really anything. So the first thing is, let's, for example, take this example where we'll invoke the service, and you can do run JavaScript. So it opens an editor, and you can just basically say local storage set item and name, right? That's name, and we can say Charlie. All right. And basically, when this page loads, it will save this value into local storage. Okay. So that's one way to do it. Another way is that, as I said, there's a special event, set local storage variable. Okay. And the way this works is that we define local storage name, so name 2, right? And we can set its value. Right. So for example. And it's very similar to what I just did using JavaScript. But it has one extra feature is that you can actually bind it to a component. So you can select a component from which to take the value. So for example, if mobile label, right, if it holds a value, when this action is invoked, the following will happen. Right? A local storage variable with this name will be created and set to the value currently held in this component. Right? So just a little bit of extra capability here. Now, you can of course do it here as well. The only difference is that you would first need to use, for example, jQuery and read the value from a component in the DOM. All right. So again, this is just a browser app for I just do this. All right. So again, you could do the same thing. All right. What else? As for again, creating, running JavaScript in other places, you can always create JavaScript. And you can always create just basically a blank file. Give me a blank file. You can create from URL, or you can upload from a file. All right. And creating a JavaScript, a blank file. And this is just a JavaScript file. You can write anything you want here, and this file will be available on every page in your app. Right? So again, very simple. Finally, the last sort of option is to go to project app settings, all right, and go to external resources. This is, by the way, shows you the current versions of various files that we use. But right here, you would specify the URL. Right? So you would specify, path to your JavaScript file, click add, and that means this file will be loaded and available for you as well. All right? So again, those are the various options for you to run, to use local storage. The last thing is mapping. Let me go here. Right? So as an example, so let's say you need to save the timestamp into local storage from the service. Okay? So again, easily done. You can create local storage here. So time, create local storage variable, right? And we can see it right here, and then you can map to it. So what this does is that it will, again, this will create the local storage with the name time, and then you can access it in any other parts of your app using, for example, the API as an example. All right? And as for, this is the response portion, but we can also go to request and, some ID. If we had another parameter here, we could map it local storage value to the services request parameter. So that's also an option. All right. So again, many places you can use local storage variables, but again, what's important to keep in mind is that everything is based on the local storage API. So at the end of the day, you can always do get item, set item, and it should work everywhere, all right? And in any browser that you run your app in. All right? So let's move on. So moving to web SQL database, right? So basically that's what the name is. It's an actual database running in the browser. And again, most people refer to it as SQLite, but it's basically based on SQLite. So again, sort of the formal name is web SQL. And what you get is that you basically get the power and flexibility of a relational database in the browser. So everything you learned about relational databases you can pretty much use. You can do queries, you can do joins, and you can define schemas, and so on. So again, it's pretty powerful. But of course, here's an example. You can do a query such final players that score greater than 10 but less than 50, right? As an example of a query that you could run. There's also support for transactions. But again, usually with powerful tools, there's also usually some sort of a complexity. But the question is, do we really need a full-blown database in the browser, right? Where you would need to write a SQL statement for every access. And again, obviously that's entirely up to you, right? If you need this capability. But even more important is that not all browsers support this feature, right? For example, Firefox and Edge do not support. But even more important is this is a spec which is no longer active. And actually a recommendation is not to use it anymore, right? Again, a lot of people use it out there today, but again, I think moving forward, if you're building a new app, the recommendation is not to use it. But as I said, you still find a lot of resources, a lot of examples out there, and probably still a lot of apps that do use web SQL database. And here's the support. Here's the support matrix. So you can see IE and Firefox do not support it, but for example, Chrome, Safari do support it, and iOS, mobile Safari do support this capability. So, all right. Now, this is an example of how you would use the database. So you can see the first line there. It creates a database called CoolDB, and it has a version, has a description, has a size, and from there it's kind of, again, if you ever worked with a database, it should look very familiar to you. We create a database, a table, and there are two columns, ID and text. Then insert the value, and then we can do a select. All right. So how would you use in Tiggzi? Well, again, anywhere you can write JavaScript. I mean, you can basically write this block of JavaScript, and you'll be again ready to go. But another option I want to show you is using a Tiggzi generic service, and you still basically would include this code that I just showed, but it has some extra features that you might find interesting. And of course, you can use Tiggzi generic service not only for database, you can just use it for any other features as well. So let me go back All right, and so to create a generic service, you just basically do the same thing as creating a REST service. You go to create new service, and we can rename this generic service 2. And you can see this is a generic service, custom JavaScript implementation, and click create service. All right, so see, it looks very similar to a REST service. It has settings, has request and response. But what we're going to do is we would like to add a custom implementation. And clicking custom implementation, so we say my custom implementation, click create. And what it does is it's going to create a JavaScript file for me, which is available right here. All right? Okay? And this is how the implementation looks. Okay? So the important part is right here, process. So right here, this is where you would write your own implementation. So basically, the code that I showed you for accessing a database or creating a database could go here, right? Now, this option here this determines if you want to use an echo service, right? And if you don't know what echo is basically you can load data into your service so it doesn't go over the network, it doesn't invoke the service, okay? And echo is defined right here. So you can basically paste a simple response, JSON response, and then turning echo on basically will not call the service over the network. It will just use the sample response all the time. So again, those are pretty useful for testing. And of course, the ESPN service has, of course, the same capability. All right, so you can put it in echo mode if you would like. Anyhow, but what other advantages do we get here versus just writing a plain JavaScript? Well, we can define parameters here, right? Param1, for example, and param2, all right? And once we define these parameters, I mean, we can use the service in mapping, just like we did with the ESPN service. So we can pass data from the page or from local storage into the generic service, which is, again, basically a custom implementation. And the same thing is for response. I mean, we can define a response. So we can say data. We can make it to be an array. And maybe this is param1. And actually, do this, right? This is param2, and so on, right? So it works sort of, it's kind of a black box in the sense it works like a regular REST service. You know, you get inputs and outputs. The difference is what happens inside. So instead of calling the ESPN service or any other service, you, as a developer, provide the implementation. But again, the extra benefit that you get is that you can still use the service as any other service in the sense it can participate in mapping, right? So which is important. Okay, and getting back here, so the settings object, it will include all the request parameters. So settings.param1 will give you all the request parameters. And finally, if you right here, you know, let's say you load data or create data. If you pass it into this function method, this is the data that's going to be available on the response side in response mapping. All right. So again, this is a kind of a powerful, an advanced feature again that you can use not only for sort of this offline feature, but really for any capability that you want out there. All right. So very good. Let's continue. And all right, moving next to IndexedDB. So I do want to mention again that Web SQL, even though might still be widely used, again, it's not an active stack. So moving forward, it is recommended to use IndexedDB, again, which is a new stack, and of course the new active stack in HTML5. And it's not a relational database as Web SQL. but it actually stores JavaScript objects, right? It does store key value pairs, but again, what you can do is you can actually point to complex objects. Okay, so that's what's important. And again, everything you do in IndexedDB always happens in the context of a transaction. Again, so this could be very useful if you have multiple windows open. So again, if everything is within a transaction, so that's helpful. So here's an example. And this is an example for HTML5rocks.com. It just shows you a very basic, example how to create a database. So again, you write JavaScript, and you can apply the same approach in Tiggzi. You can create a generic service where you'll be able to basically make these calls and then pass data into the generic service, and then of course expose data via return parameters, response parameters. So again, as for support, again you can see that there is a decent support, still not as much as Web SQL, but we've got IE, Firefox, Chrome, and of course the only issue is that the mobile browsers don't support it yet. But again, it is the new active spec, so it is expected that they will support this new spec very soon. All right. And again, the way you connect this with Tiggzi is, again, you can use the generic service that I described, but we are actually planning to add features, and by features I mean visual features, wizards, and other options to actually make it even simpler to work with IndexedDB. Again, you can use any JavaScript library today, and Web SQL, IndexedDB, anything you find out there, you can easily sort of import into Tiggzi and use it. But our goal is to make it easy to provide these sorts of visual features and wizards, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing, with IndexedDB. We're going to be adding features where, instead of writing JavaScript, again, which you can always do, you'll be able to kind of connect things visually, run wizards, and so on. So that's all coming. I do want to mention quickly about hybrid apps with PhoneGap. As I mentioned, PhoneGap is included in the project, so you can use any API. And PhoneGap does have a storage API, and but it is based on Web SQL. So you guys keep that in mind. So if you use PhoneGap, you're welcome to use it. But again, it is based on Web SQL. So this is just a screenshot from the docs. So again, something to keep in mind if you're building hybrid apps with PhoneGap. So what I covered up until now was how to take up data, users, records, shopping carts, and make it available in the browser. But the other thing that I mentioned is that we also need to make the actual files available offline. And that's where the application cache comes in. And again, it is a new HTML5 feature, but basically we can tell the browser which app files we would like to be cached or available offline, such as HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and images. And the way you do it is you define a manifest file. You can see in the first code sample, you basically point to a manifest file, and below you see a symbol of a manifest file. You basically list all the files that you want the browser to cache. So this means that these files, right, will be cached and available offline if there is no network. All right? Again, this is sort of the simplest file you can do. I do have a next example that shows you slightly more capabilities. Basically, the first cache section defines the files that should be available offline, index.html, for example, cool.jl. Next, network means these files will only be available over the network, so do not cache them. So that file should not be available offline. All right? And next, we can do a fallback. For example, if main.html is not available, then use static main.html file. There's some other properties you can set. Again, this is all sort of defined. This is sort of a standard HTML5, again, so you can learn more what's available. But this is the approach you would use to make the file, right, not the data, available offline. So how would you do this in Tiggzi today? Well, one way is to export the app, and I showed you a feature where you can export the app, and you could define this manifest attribute, right, and then list the files. But we are actually, again, working on a feature where you'll be able to, we'll basically generate the manifest files. We'll keep it blank because it's up to you which files you want to save, and then you'll be able to sort of select, in settings, which files you would like to be available offline. Again, so you'll be able to do it via, a wizard, but we're also going to give you an option to edit the manifest directly. Okay? If you, we do have a source tab in Tiggzi now. Let me quickly just show you this. We do have a source tab, and where we're going to make it possible right now, everything you open here is read-only, but we are working on making it possible for you to edit those files. So you're going to get, basically, you can use the visual features, but at the same time, you'll be able to use the source features, as well. So you can open the file and just edit the file as much as you need. So I think that it's a very good capability that we're planning to add very, very soon. All right. As for browser support, you can see pretty much everyone, all the browsers, including mobile browsers, support this capability. So that's very good. All right. So as I said at the beginning, to build a true offline app, you need two things. First, you need to make the actual app files available offline, being in the browser. And that's HTML files, JavaScript, CSS, images, and so on. All right? But you also need to make data available offline, right, or in the browser. And the recommendation, of course, is to use web storage, which is local storage, or IndexedDB. So I think you really need those two things to build a truly offline app, because having just one will not usually be sufficient. All right. So now we get the promo code. So thank you very much for joining us today. And what you guys should do is write down this code, and you're going to get 2 months pro plan. So you can try Tiggzi, just and see how easy it is to build apps. So.
Oh, and with the promo code, if you're actually an existing user, if you have a free plan, you have to remember to edit your account. You don't just go to the pro plan and start creating one, because it'll be stuck.
Yeah. If you're an existing free user, go to dashboard, manage plan, and just enter this, and it's going to basically upgrade you to pro. So you don't need to sign again. It's the same account. Yeah. We're going to go into Q&A, but I'm going to go back in a second to the promo code so you guys can write it down. So these are some of the resources to get in touch with us, but you can pretty much find everything from Tiggzi.com, all the docs, support, email. So I'm going to stay here, and then
that's a good idea.
We're going to open the Q&A.
All right. Now, one thing to summarize this whole thing is that there's all the different ways to build in offline capabilities to apps. A lot of that is changing anyway, right? So, and then Tiggzi itself is adding more and more stuff as it goes along. So this is all something that's really in flux, and this is definitely something that we would do another webinar about, because 6 months from now the situation will be a lot different. And so I think one of the questions was, is this going to be repeated? And the answer is yes, but everything will probably be changed. So, except for the title.
Yes.
All right. So let's see what kind of questions people had. We get a variety of people who come to these webinars. So here's a pretty basic question about about resetting your password when you get it down. It's your email address. There's just a link that says reset my password, like the standard approach.
My question is, reset account password, is it in Tiggzi.com or for the app?
Well, no. It's for the Tiggzi account.
Oh, yeah. There's a reset password link, and you'll get a new password. You'll set a new password. But if it doesn't work, shoot us an email to support at Tiggzi.com.
Oh, here's a guy's asking about Bluetooth devices. Do we have any? Do you have anything to say about connecting or using Bluetooth devices? Or
so anything device specific, it's coming via PhoneGap. So whatever PhoneGap provides, if it provides API to communicate with Bluetooth, then you can use it. As far as I know, and again, I don't recall seeing any Bluetooth API in PhoneGap.
Mm-hmm.
So, but again, all the native capabilities, we are just using PhoneGap as is, and so that's how you get access to device features.
All right, and then and here's a response about the mobile browser. I think, well, this sounds like the person who had the problem with the password. I think we need to just contact them. All right, let's see. Here's another question that we answered. You were giving an example of Tiggzi connect with the ESPN example.
Yes.
You were giving an example of a Tiggzi connecting to an external API.
Yes.
But we actually have our own backend services too. So that they're not as obviously they're more limited, but they're also out there. And so you have options. We provide a limited set of API services, and you can tap into the vast world of API services.
Absolutely. And actually, we do, so to get to backend services, when you're inside the builder, there is a backend services button that you can click on. And, we've got it's a database. You can easily create collections. And everything you do here is instantly exposed as REST API. Just quickly to show, if I click on this database, so you can see collections, and so everything is exposed as REST instantly, and you can actually even get a curl command, and you can copy this curl command and basically create a service. But we've got an integration, with backend services and the builder, and the way to do it, to get it, is create new database services, and it's going to ask you to select the database, and then you can select the collections, for example, select all. And what this is going to do is going to automatically generate all the REST services. So this is even faster. So instead of creating each service manually, which is pretty simple, this will actually generate all the services within a second for you. So anyhow, you should definitely give this a try.
Okay. Here's a kind of general question. Do you have in mind, you're talking about all those different techniques you use for building an offline capabilities. What you think is a typical use case for someone wanting some kind of offline capability in that? I mean, it's kind of an exercise. Like, what are you thinking about in terms of?
Well, I mean, it really can be any app where there is no network connection. I mean, it can be really anything. I mean, maybe you don't need to, basically, when you're offline, you don't maybe need to give all the capabilities of an app offline, but you want a very small subset of the app capability. But I think what's important is not to just kind of, if you're offline, if I show an error message, this is fine. You might want to show like a fallback page. Say, hey, this is now offline. You can do this and this, right? Mm-hmm. When you're online, you'll be able to do it.
Oh yeah, and another example is, I'm kind of a backward person who I got this free iTouch 3 years ago that is only Wi-Fi. There's no phone service, there's no wireless in it. So I need apps that are able to, often I'm not online. Because I have to rely on Wi-Fi. So in that kind of case, it's really important to have some way of handling the offline situation. All right, I think we have time for a few more questions. Here's a person asking if we can kind of clarify how long, you were saying that we're going to add in a lot of support in Tiggzi that's more visually oriented and more wizard-like. Do you have any timeline in mind? I mean, it's a legitimate question. We may not have an answer, but it's a good question.
No, it is a good question, but you know, I don't have an exact date. You know, we're constantly adding new features. You know, we try to push, you know, a release or some features, you know, every month with minor updates, you know, around a big release.
Okay.
So again, every month we're pushing, and again, being a cloud service, it makes it super easy for us, right? You just basically sign in one day and you get new features. So again, I don't have an exact date, unfortunately. What I can say is that we do have a very exciting release coming in April, a very exciting release with some really cool stuff planned. So definitely stay tuned. You know, just a few more weeks.
And another thing to keep in mind is that the way that Tiggzi is developed is very responsive to when people go online and say, I want this. We have a get satisfaction forum. So if you want to speed up the development of a particular feature, the best way to do it is to kind of vote into it. I think they literally vote for it on get satisfaction, right? Just go and post it and say, I want this. And then that adds that has some effect on where it is in the queue of changes that will be made. Let's see. Here's the question. I don't quite, maybe you understand this better. Do you have startup reference designs? You sure what that means?
Yeah, not sure I understand.
Okay. Well, that person can follow up then and just send an email directly to you. All right. We have time for just one or two questions. Okay, here's a question. Let me just read it out to you instead of trying to interpret it. I'm guessing that even the packaged apps like .apk incorporate the mobile browser. So in order to make those work offline, the same steps are required as presented earlier, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially with data, absolutely. With data, yes. When you package a native app or hybrid app, actually those files are, the app files are actually available also sort of in the app for you.
Oh, okay.
So, but as for app data, yes, you still want to run, you know, use you know, local storage or IndexedDB, for example.
Okay, and what about the BlackBerry?
BlackBerry, so basically you can develop for BlackBerry today, and sort of a number of ways to approach it. First, I mean, if you build the mobile web app, you're targeting every platform, right? BlackBerry, Android, iOS, Windows, you name it. And any device with a browser today, you'll be able, you know, users will be able to run the app. You know, BlackBerry 10, you can export the app you can export the HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and then two sort of options. You can take it to PhoneGap build. I believe they have BlackBerry 10 support, but if not, they'll be adding it. So there's a build PhoneGap is running, very similar to ours, that they support BlackBerry, or you can take it to BlackBerry. I think they have a tool that will wrap the HTML, JavaScript, sort of also in a native router. That's the way to do it, you know, today. But as BlackBerry 10 picks up, I mean, we can easily add a build, a cloud build, in a similar fashion we have for Android and iOS. Okay,
and here's a question that I probably can answer. It's about the this is a scenario where you create the UI through Tiggzi and then export it out to Visual Studio 12 and add other features. That is pretty much, that's a very standard kind of scenario for people developing with Tiggzi. You don't have to, we try and build Tiggzi so that you can do it, you can create useful apps without ever leaving Tiggzi. But we also are, you know, if you need to go outside of Tiggzi for various reasons, then it also functions as a very high-end prototyping tool. One more question, Max. Let's see. Here's one. We have a lot of questions, actually. We're kind of running out of time. But if your question isn't answered, I would, Max, will you switch to the thing with your email address? Just send an email directly to Max. He likes getting emails. Or you can send it to support, but you can also just send it straight to Max, and then we can try and answer it. Here's something. This person has a huge XML file to be used for an offline app. where would it reside? I don't want the user to be able to see or access it. I have a feed that I'd like to pull into an app. It's a CSV feed. Oh, that's another question. So the question is, someone with a huge XML file, where would it live? I don't want the user to be able to see or access it.
Yeah, I mean, with regard to offline apps, yeah, if you're the data is available in the browser, so not having the user being able to see the file, again, I'm not sure there's sort of a simple way to do it. Again, so if the file is downloaded to the browser, again, then the user could potentially look at the file. So maybe one way is, of course, to keep it somewhere in the cloud, but of course, then there is no sort of offline capability.
Mm-hmm.
But again, as an option is that you could keep the file online, and then if the app goes offline, you have maybe a limited set of capability, and when that specific file is being requested, you can just have some sample offline data as an example.
Oh, okay.
Or just say, hey, this is not available, or until you get online.
Okay.
So.
Okay, it's 12:05 Pacific time, so we're going to have to shut everything down. I'm sorry we couldn't get through all the questions. Probably the most efficient method to make sure your question gets answered is just to send it directly to Max. He's very responsive to questions about Tiggzi. And there's his address. It's pretty straightforward. You can either use max@exadel.com, which is the one that's being displayed now, or I think his preferred one is max@tiggzi.com, but they're the same email address. So I'm gonna shut everything down now. And thanks a lot to all of you for coming to this. We really appreciate people taking time out of their day to come and listen to us. And don't forget, there'll be a follow-up email with information about how you can link to how you can access a recording of this webinar. So thank you.